I do not need a copy of the ministerial code or a copy of the law of the land in front of me to know that what Peter Mandelson did was completely outrageous. And there is a feeling of deep betrayal here. He's betrayed 2 prime ministers. He's betrayed his country and our national interest. He's betrayed Epstein's victims. And of course, it's right that people ask questions about the process, his appointment sacking, and the Prime Minister will be transparent about that. I will just say one thing, though. We mustn't let Peter Mandelson off the hook in all of this. He is the person who is responsible and who is at serious fault and must now suffer the consequences of his actions both in office and since.
I think it was inevitable. I think it is right that the police carry out this investigation, but we should not let this distract us from the fact that the Prime Minister has his fingerprints all over this. He knew all of the allegations, concerns and reports about Peter Mandelson, knew that he was a close friend and associate of a convicted paedophile, and he still gave him the biggest job in the Foreign Office at a time when UK-US relations are at a critical point. That's what he chose to do, and he's got a lot of questions to answer.
Well, all of this has now come out because Jeffrey Epstein's emails have been released. We've seen his behaviour in black and white. The man was clearly a very effective liar. He lied to people in Number 10. He's lied to the country for years. He's now been found out, which is right, and we've taken all the necessary action to remove him from the House of Lords. He's no longer a member of the Labour Party, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, the end of his public life. And as soon as Keir, when that release came out in September, saw the nature and extent of his relationship with this awful man, he was sacked as ambassador. He was literally woken out of his bed at 6 in the morning to be sacked and told he had to come back to the country. That was the right approach. I'm very pleased now that he's no longer going to be a member of the House of Lords. He's no longer a member of the Labour Party. And I would just say, like anybody else in public life, I'm glad to see the back of him.
I can tell you that no one needed to tell the Prime Minister that Peter Mandelson shouldn't return to public life, shouldn't return to the House of Lords, should be stripped of his peerage, should be stripped of other titles that confer on him that status that was given to him through public service. But now we have seen, far from public service and national interest, self-service and self-interest, of course, all of that should go. And the Prime Minister's led on that, just as he sacked him rapidly when the first tranche of files were released.
My Lords, given the public interest and for the convenience of the House, I've decided to inform the House that the Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February. I will formally notify this to the House tomorrow in the usual way. Tributes to the Lord Wallace of Tankernes.
He was appointed on the basis that he had considerable experience both as this country's business secretary and as the EU Trade Commissioner. That, combined with his political experience at a sensitive time for UK-US relations and against the backdrop of global instability, it was felt that he was the right person with the right skill set. And of course, there was a vetting process, and he was asked about the relationship with Epstein. Assurances were given, and I think there's a general principle people tend to abide by, which is not presuming people to be guilty by association. What the Prime Minister was clear about when the last tranche of information from the Epstein files was released was that clearly he had not been given a full and accurate picture of that association, and he was not confident that there wasn't worse to come in these files. That is why the Prime Minister sacked him rapidly.
And thank you very much indeed also for that very typical 11th hour intervention by you with your phone call to the President.
Answering any questions about him and meet him. He was a prolific networker, and I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
Of our existing membership, and so I really fear a referendum was not the European Union at all. I'm not saying the British people love the European Union. They're very sceptical.
How are you feeling, Mr. Mandelson? Go say a few words.
I very much enjoyed my work in Europe and working on trade and development issues. But the Prime Minister has asked me to...
I think the Prime Minister's going for maximum transparency here. He's obviously drawing a line that I think people will understand and agree with, which is not releasing information where it might compromise our national security and our security services, or where there may be information in there that might undermine international relations with other countries. But apart from those exceptions, the Prime Minister is going for real transparency here.
So, Sir Ed Davey, you're calling for a statutory public inquiry into Jeffrey Epstein and his influence in British politics. Can you just tell me about that?
Well, Lord Mandelson was giving away national state secrets at a very difficult time for our country, and that is one of the grievous breaches of national security I've ever seen. So I think it warrants a full public inquiry, alongside making sure that the British victims of the vile paedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein get their cases heard.
And the Prime Minister's now taken a much harder line on Lord Mandelson. He said that he should be removed from the House of Lords. This is not long after he appointed him as his ambassador to Washington. Do you think he should have known better than to do that?
Well, the Prime Minister has questions to answer. He has to be held to account for appointing Peter Mandelson to the most prestigious role in our diplomatic life, the Ambassador to the United States. What did the Prime Minister know? What was he told? And why wasn't he told more? We really need to get to the bottom of that. The Prime Minister has to answer those questions.
And this inquiry, presumably you wanted to go quite deep and investigate all the associations that Jeffrey Epstein had with political figures in the UK. Do you think there are other people that may be caught up in this?
Well, the public inquiry that Liberal Democrats believe we should have into all this should have a wide remit. Yes, it should look at the crimes of Peter Mandelson, but if there's any other British politicians that have been caught up in this, they need to be investigated too.
For each individual peer who has brought the other place into disrepute. Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise the strength of feeling on all sides of the House, myself included, and the Government will of course keep members up to date. I commend the statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement. The crimes of Jeffrey Epstein were truly terrible. Paedophilia, sex trafficking, child prostitution. It was an awful abuse of power. And it is, of course, a great embarrassment to our country that its most senior ambassador should have been caught up with a man like him. In this latest set of releases from the US Department of Justice, it's clearer than ever that theirs was a relationship built not just on affection, but on the transfer of money from Epstein to Mandelson's family, and the transfer of information from Mandelson to Epstein. In some cases, this was apparently market-sensitive information that Mandelson only received by dint of being a member of the Labour government. So, of course, we welcome the belated announcement that there will be an investigation into Mandelson's conduct whilst he was a minister.